Hello everyone, my name's Mike Alewitz, and today we're going to conduct a rigorous critique of the Wyland mural. You don't have to agree with some of the things I'm going to say, I just want you to consider it. Just so you know where I'm coming from, I was a billboard painter and a muralist for over 40 years. I've worked all over the world. I directed the mural painting program at Central Connecticut State University, where I'm Professor Emeritus. I first came down here to New London, in fact, from New Britain, when I served as a commission on the city canvases program that the governor had to select murals for the city, one of which I'm going to comment on later on in the critique. What I want to do is take a look at the mural in both its content, its context, and the formal qualities of it. One important thing to note is that Wyland has painted over 100 whale murals around the world. So his work is quite monumental, and that should be taken into consideration. But for our purposes, we have to look at this as though it's a standalone piece. We're looking at 3 sperm whales, a male, a female, and a calf. Now, whales are very interesting creatures. They're over 50 feet long on average. The brain is the largest brain of any creature, living or extinct. It's 5 times as large as a human brain. It's the loudest of any animal. The head of a sperm whale takes up fully 1/3 of their body. And inside the head, it holds a ton of spermaceti, which is the material it's named after, which is very valuable, was used in things like perfume and to create candles, all kinds of stuff. Their behavior is quite fascinating. Pods, groups of sperm whales, sleep sometimes in a vertical position, sometimes upside down. They hunt upside down in these incredibly deep dives that go to the bottom of the ocean. And there they feed almost entirely on giant squid. Which you see a squid in here. They have also not responded well to being hunted by human beings. Oftentimes they have attacked whalers, overturned their boats. In fact, in 1820, it was a huge bull sperm whale that destroyed the whaling ship, the Essex. It became very famous. The crew had to abandon ship. They spent months adrift in a lifeboat, turned to cannibalism, and very few of them survived. And that was what inspired Herman Melville to write Moby Dick. Now, along with the whales being very interesting, the lives of the whalers were quite interesting. At a time when labor could be very brutal in any of its forms, whaling was particularly horrendous. Small boats going out to harpoon the whales were often knocked over or destroyed. When whalers managed to harpoon and kill a whale, they had to row this enormous body back to a ship. They lived in cramped quarters. The food was awful. The work was backbreaking and a living hell. Because what they did was they tied up the carcass next to the ship, cut it up, and onboard ship melted down the blubber into oil, which they put into caskets. And the entire ship would be drenched in this oil, including their food, clothing, everything else. It was not a pleasant job. A whaling trip would last from 2 to 4 years. But it created a lot of wealth for the emerging capitalist class of the United States, in particular also for wealthy people in New London. And its importance as an animal was recognized when the Connecticut state named it the state animal. All of that stuff, and I'm just scratching the surface of it, unfortunately, none of that is revealed in this particular mural. In fact, it's pretty trite image. It's the three whales. There's nothing else in the ocean. There's nothing else going on. You see a little bit of light reflected at the top. But really, there's not a lot to engage you, to draw you into it, to make you wonder about things. It's obviously an attempt to paint figuratively, but it's not really well done. It's factually wrong, of course, as I mentioned, that whales hunted upside down near the bottom of the ocean. Very few images of giant squid even exist because they live so far down in the ocean. All right, so what are some of the formal considerations of when you plan and go to paint a mural? One of the very important things is where the viewer is going to be. Where are they going to stand? What are they going to see? Where do you place your imagery on the wall that makes sense for that particular site and for your particular audience? And here, one of the big failings, in my opinion, is that there's nothing near the bottom of the wall. There's a very wide sidewalk in front of it, ideal for people to stand in view. And if you are on that, all you see is basically a solid blue wall. There's nothing really to engage you, to make you try to figure something out, anything like that. To really see the mural, you have to cross the street, and then you don't see very much. You just see the three whales. The whole scene is painted in very predictable color. Blue water, blue sky, gray whale. And that's really not how things are. Even in a dark ocean, there's a myriad of colors. There's things that are going on. There's water that's moving. There's plant life. There's flotsam and jetsam. There's all kinds of stuff in the sky. Skies aren't just simply blue. They have gradations. There's all kinds of things going on. And in order to make something lively, you need to put those kind of colors in there. In other words, even in a gray, you can have a gray with a lot of red, you can have a gray with a lot of yellow, blue, whatever. And those colors and how they relate to each other is what can add life to the mural. If you're going to render something so that it looks realistic, then you have to be consistent in how you do it. What are the things I noticed on the mural? There's a couple of the eyes of the whales that are rendered very carefully so that they kind of pop out and look like eyes. And that's something that artists do sometimes when they're trying to kind of impress people, because it's a lot of tricks really, and people go, wow, look at that eye, it looks so realistic. But unfortunately, it's not covered, it doesn't extend beyond the eye. So you have this very rendered realistic eye popping out, but then around it is just the solid gray flatness of the whale. I'm going to show you an image. I never painted a whale, but I did paint a dolphin for a commercial job that I did about 30 years ago. And I want to use it. It was for a commercial mural for Sequest Toys or Sequest television show. I don't even remember. And I just want to use it as an example. It's a bad photo, but it'll give you an idea of what I want. And for something to appear as a volume, you need light, you need shadow, you have a highlight, which are the spots that are either wet or closest to the object. You have a cast shadow where the light is blocked by something, and you have reflected light, because light is a thing. It comes, it hits things, and it bounces around. So you have to have those things, and if you look at this dolphin, you can see it appears to have volume because it has all of those elements to it. I'm not holding it up as great art, I'm just using it as that example. Another thing I noticed about the way this was painted was that it was sprayed, and I myself do a lot of spray work, and spraying is a fine way to apply paint. But when you spray, you're applying very light coats of paint. When you use brushes or rollers, you're really throwing on a lot of paint that's very thick. And what you need to do is you need to put that opaque coat down first and then spray over it for a very important reason. Sun is the enemy of color on a wall. And what happens is paint is composed of pigment and binder. And as the sun continues to bake the wall, you begin to lose the color. The colors become what we call fugitive. And so if you put thin coats of spray work on there, then it's going to fade very quickly. And not only was this sprayed very thinly, but it wasn't even sprayed consistently. If you walk up and look, you can see that it was just really put on very, very quickly. I was not involved in this. I don't know what materials were used, but on the pictures, it shows them using what I think is Sherwin-Williams house paint, which is also not the best kind of paint to use. Most muralists use Nova Colors, Liquitex, artist acrylics that are designed to hold up as much as possible in the sun. There's also no top coat on this, and a top coat may or may not provide some protection from UV light, but one of the things it does do is it makes the surface consistent so you don't see spots that glare. When you stand below this thing and you look up, you see spots that are highlights, some that don't. It's very inconsistent. So those are some of the problems with how this was painted. To draw a contrast, I would point across the street to one of the murals that I helped select, which was Hard Hat Painters by Troy Zalsny and Michael McNabney. They painted this in 2012, and they were paid, between the two of them, $22,000, and that had to cover the materials, insurance, and things like that. And I'm going to get back to funding at the end of this thing. Now, I don't want to get into a whole critique of their work, but if you go across the street, if you look at it, you can go up to the mural and look at it and see things. You can stand back from the mural and see things. It incorporates the architectural elements on the wall, the windows, the door, the shape of it. There's a lot of things going on in the water, things that draw your eye into the distance. You come forward again. It's a lot of motion. It's very lively. And the main elements of the content of it is hard hat painters. They're painting underwater in these suits. So there's these little humorous elements and stuff like that. The point of it is that you become engaged in the painting. And that's what good art does, is it engages you. So you become involved. You want to see what's going on. You want to figure it out. You see new things when you go back to look at it. That's very telling. Now, obviously, I'm not going to critique Wyland and how he should go paint whale murals. So really, this is aimed towards other people who are considering painting murals. Okay, there's a couple other things I want to talk about. And one of them is very important, which is safety when painting a mural. As I mentioned, I was not involved in this process, and I didn't watch much of it, but I did walk past several times and took a look and see what was going on. And I was a little surprised and put off by what I saw. The work area was not blocked off carefully. There were electrical wires all over the place. There were compressors. There was the lift, which could have been accessible to somebody. Somebody could have gotten involved with it. I saw that there were young people up in the lift. People were spraying without protective gear, without a mask. Spraying paint without a OSHA certified quality mask is dangerous. paint is toxic. You know, some paints they call non-toxic, but paints are pigment. They're either mineral or plastic. You're breathing this in. What can the results of this be? Well, you're going to come down, you're not going to think there's anything wrong with you maybe, but 10 years down the road, you may have issues. So that is very important. Just being conscious of safety. Now, you know, when I was a billboard painter, you're 100 feet up in the air, you're on a bosun's chair or swing stage. You're very conscious of safety issues because if you make a mistake, you're going to die. When you're working close to the ground, when you're 10 feet up in the air, when you're on a stepladder, whatever, it's very easy to not be aware. Something can be dropped. A tool can be dropped from a few feet above somebody's head, a can of paint, and that can result in a very serious injury. And an injury on a project like this, and it's to the city's credit that they're sponsoring a big cultural project, would be a disaster. Not just because of somebody being injured, not just because it would stop work on the thing, but it would really affect things for a long time to come. I'm very proud to say that in the 16 years I directed the program at CCSU, we were very, very strict about safety, and we did not have one single injury, and that's what you want to shoot for. So any other projects in the future should really have all of that outlined. I have a handbook that I wrote if anybody wants it. The other thing I want to talk about is the funding for this project. Over $300,000 was spent on this project. Now, Wyland is a wealthy artist, and he magnanimously just took $30,000 from this thing. $275,000 went to Armani Restoration Company or construction company to prepare the wall. $275,000. There was no accounting for this, how it was spent. It was not itemized. And in the interest of full disclosure, I'm going to tell you that when I learned of this, I wrote a letter to the Day, and I suggested that instead of spending $275,000 or $300,000, I forget what it was at the time, that you could have 10 murals painted by some excellent local artists, which New London has plenty of, that would totally transform the downtown area. Would garnish a lot of great publicity, would attract artists to the city, could really have a transformative effect. Now, I know a lot of people, there are people in the city who feel very strongly about the Wyland mural. It's very important to them, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't. Art is an individual thing, and you may think it's wonderful, but I do think you really have to consider how money is spent in order to create public art. Not that there should be oversight committees about imagery, but that there should be oversight on the basic funding of projects. Finally, I'm just going to wrap this up by saying that I'm the artist in residence at Red Square, which is a gallery here in New London that we're basically building, and it contains displays and portable murals that we have painted all over the world, many in conflict zones, in places like Chernobyl and Iraq and the occupied territories. And there is a wealth of information here and a lot to learn and think about. If you're interested in that, and if you'd like to take a look at what we have, just go to redsquare.org. That's redsq.org.